CEO saw a poor single dad cancel his daughter's birthday cake. What she did next shocked everyone. The bakery smelled of warm vanilla and sugar that morning, the kind of scent that could tug even the heaviest heart toward joy. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, where laughter blended with the sound of milk frothers steaming and ovens humming. Children pressed their noses to the glass displays, eyes wide at cupcakes topped with swirls of frosting, while adults leaned into the simple comfort of fresh bread and warm pastries. Claire Donovan stood quietly in line, hands tucked into the pockets of her cream sweater. Known to the world as the powerhouse CEO of Donovan Global Industry Asset, a multi-billion-dollar empire spanning technology, logistics, and real estate, as she was unrecognizable here, in sneakers and jeans, without her usual entourage. She wasn't there for interviews, publicity, or deals. She was simply there as Aunt Claire, on a mission to pick up a cake for her niece's birthday party later that afternoon. Her assistant Julia stood beside her, scrolling through her phone. Julia had insisted on coming along, worried that Claire's schedule was too tight for errands. But Claire had smiled and said, "Some things are worth making time for." As she waited, her gaze fell on the man in front of her. He wore a faded construction uniform, his boots scuffed, his hair mussed from long hours of work. His name, stitched in thread across the pocket, read Mark. His hands were rough, with the kind of wear that spoke of years lifting, building, and laboring under sun and rain. And yet, the way he held his daughter's small hand was gently protective, tender, as though she were his most fragile treasure. The girl couldn't have been more than 7. She had big, sparkling eyes and uneven pigtails that suggested her father had done them himself. She bounced on her toes as she stared at the pink frosted cake in the display case, her joy so pure that it radiated through the room. This was not just a cake, it was her cake, her 7th birthday cake. When the cashier read the total, Mark froze. His hand moved slowly to his wallet, his fingers trembling slightly. Claire could see the tension in his shoulders as he unfolded his worn bills, carefully counting each one. He counted once, then again, as though maybe he had miscalculated. But the truth was undeniable. The numbers didn't add up. His face flushed. Shame washed over him, heavy and unrelenting. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Yeah, broken bar, I have to cancel the order." The cashier's eyes softened, though her voice remained professional. "Of course, sir. I'll cancel it right away." The little girl's hopeful smile collapsed in an instant. Her shoulders sank as she looked up at her father. She tugged gently on his sleeve. "Daddy, it's okay," she whispered, her small voice steady, braver than it should have been. "We can just put candles on the pancakes at home." Her words were like a knife through the quiet. Claire's chest tightened. She had sat through million-dollar negotiations without so much as blinking. She had faced critics, competitors, and an economy that demanded constant battle. But none of that had prepared her for the sight of a child burying her disappointment to protect her father. This wasn't the resilience of a CEO. This was the resilience of love. Mark lowered his eyes, his shame almost tangible, and gently guided his daughter toward the door. Claire stepped forward before he could leave. "Excuse me," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but it carried enough weight that the bakery quieted. All eyes turned toward her. She smiled at the cashier, then at Mark. "I think there's been a mistake," she said. "I actually ordered 2 cakes this morning. Could you please give this one to my friend here?" The cashier blinked, confused, but quickly nodded. Mark froze, stunned. "Ma'am, you don't have Towa." But Claire shook her head gently. "I insist. Birthdays are meant to be celebrated properly." The little girl gasped. Her hands shot up to her mouth, her eyes wide and shimmering with disbelief. "You a broken bar? You mean I can have the cake?" Claire crouched down so she was eye level with her. "Yes, sweetheart, you absolutely can. And I hope when you blow out those candles, you make the biggest wish in the world." The girl's face lit up, her smile so bright it could have outshone the candles themselves. Mark's eyes filled with tears. He tried to form words, but they tangled in his throat. Finally, in a hoarse whisper, he managed, "I don't know how to thank you." "You just did," Claire said, her own voice thick with emotion. The cashier slid the cake carefully across the counter. The little girl clutched the box as though it were a treasure. As they left the bakery, heads turned, and people who had once been impatient now watched with softened eyes. Some smiled, others blinked away tears. For Claire, the moment lingered. She paid for her niece's cake, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the image burned into her heart, a little girl's joy restored. A week later, a plain envelope appeared on Claire's desk. No company letterhead, no sender's name, just her name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a letter. It was from Mark. He thanked her, and not in grand words, but in honest ones. He wrote about how he had been working double shifts ever since his wife passed away 2 years earlier, trying to hold everything together for his daughter. How that birthday had weighed on him because he couldn't afford to give her the celebration she deserved. And then, enclosed, there was a photo. His daughter, beaming from ear to ear, sat behind the pink frosted cake, 7 candles glowing brightly. In her eyes was unfiltered joy, the kind that children are supposed to have. Beneath it, a single line: "You didn't just buy a cake, you gave my little girl her childhood back for one perfect day." Claire sat back in her chair, her throat tight, her vision blurring with tears. She had closed multi-billion-dollar deals, had her name etched into awards and business journals, but nothing compared to this photograph, nothing compared to this simple truth. Sometimes, the smallest acts create the biggest impact. She framed the photo and placed it beside her trophies and certificates. Day after day, it reminded her of something she had almost forgotten: that leadership wasn't about titles, or profits, or market share. It was about people. Weeks passed, but Claire couldn't shake the moment. She began noticing the people around her: Moria, the janitor who worked late hours in her office, the single mother who served coffee every morning, the delivery drivers who kept her empire moving. Each one had a story. Each one carried unseen struggles. Quietly, without press releases or photo ops, Claire started a new initiative within her company. A fund for single parents. A small program, at first, to help cover birthdays, school supplies, and emergency groceries. Not charity, but dignity. A safety net for those who needed one. Word spread through her company. Employees volunteered. Partners contributed. Soon, what began as one cake in a bakery grew into something much larger. Hundreds of families were touched. Children celebrated birthdays they might have gone without. Parents breathed easier, knowing someone cared. And through it all, Claire kept Mark's daughter's photo on her desk. It was her reminder, her compass. Because sometimes, the greatest legacy isn't in profits or power, it's in the lives we quietly lift, the dignity we restore, and the joy we choose to create for others. And on that ordinary morning, in a bakery scented with sugar and vanilla, one CEO and one struggling father crossed paths and proved to everyone watching that kindness still has the power to change the world.